Wondering how to build your smart home from scratch? In this 10-week series, I'll show you how you can build a smart home that's right for you. Hi, this is Gio from Digital Spring Media, and let's get started with the video. Please remember to subscribe here and turn on the bell. Okay, so let's start with the basics of building a smart home from scratch. So first thing you'll need obviously an internet connection. So let's say this is the internet. Cool, so you'll have your home and you've got the internet. So you will normally have some sort of cable that will come into your home, and this will normally go into a router. Now, this is quite essential for how the smart home products work, because they will need to communicate out to the internet, but they also need to communicate within your own home, and they need to talk to other devices. So you've got basically two ways of accessing the internet. You can either use a hub, or you'll have devices that will connect directly. So for example, your mobile phone over Wi-Fi. And normally these hubs will be plugged in with an Ethernet port. So these two are sort of the two types of ways that your smart home products can communicate. So hubs, there are very different hubs. For example, you have the Amazon Echo, which acts as a hub. You have products like SmartThings from Samsung. You have your Google product. You'll have your Apple HomeKit. So you've got quite a lot of hubs. You've also got something that I use personally, which is called Home Assistant, which is a bit more advanced, but we'll cover that in a future episode. Perfect. So these different type of hubs, they communicate through something called a protocol. So we have protocol. So we have Z-Wave. We have Zigbee, and we've got Wi-Fi. So those are protocols. Basically, they're like standard of communication. I'm not going to go into sort of technical details of the differences between them, but we'll cover them in some sort of detail. But just be aware that each device you buy will be compatible either with. So let me make this clear. So each device you buy can be compatible with multiple hubs, and potentially will be using one or multiple protocols. So that's how that would function. Okay, so let's talk about the protocols a bit. So Wi-Fi is sort of your standard, probably what you know already about. So each device that's connected within your home, so a laptop or a smart TV or a doorbell, whatever, it's normally connected via Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi has two type of bands. It has a 2.4 gigahertz, has a 5 gigahertz frequency band. So what this means is basically it's the amount of data that you can send and receive across the Wi-Fi devices. So because smart home gadgets don't transmit much data, they're quite they don't send that much data, so they don't need to work on a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi frequency, but they will normally work on a 2.4. So that's what you need to look out for, which is really fine. I think that's good enough. So in terms of your protocols, your Z-Wave, actually that's proprietary. So what does that mean? That means that Z-Wave is locked down. It's built by a company. So that means there are a lot less products compatible with Z-Wave, but that also means that it's a bit more stable because it's been validated. All products that are Z-Wave certified have been validated. Zigbee, on the other hand, it's more open source, and there are different types of variations of Zigbee. So you need to bear that in mind, but it's now more commonly adopted. Okay, so let's now move on and talk about the different type of products you can purchase and you can eventually automate. So there are a lot of products, but basically at a high level, you've got different categories of products. And then within the category of products, these products will be compatible with either one of the hubs that we talked about, and it will use one of the protocols that we talked about. And that's going to cover you really for like 95% of the cases. So let's talk about thermostats. So we have thermostats. So something like this, a normal digital thermostat. You might know of a few brands like Nest, Honeywell. And basically what they do is they just substitute your programmer, your manual thermostat, and they add smart capabilities to it. So some act and work and connect directly to Wi-Fi. So for example, the Nest, this would connect directly to Wi-Fi. So you really don't need a hub. What does that mean really? That means that you don't need to buy a hub before you can really start getting the sort of advantages of using a thermostat. So you can right on go and buy a Nest product. You can plug it into your Wi-Fi network, and off you go, and you can start automating, and you can start having your smart thermostat. What can you do with a smart thermostat? Well, basically, you're going to turn on and off the heating when you're not there, and you can also put air conditioning if you do have aircon. And that's really big advantage, because when you leave the office, wherever you're coming from, you're coming back home and it's cold, you turn on the heating, you'll come in your house and you'll feel the difference. So thermostats are really useful. They're also energy saving because they can sort of turn the heating off when people leave the house. So they've got all these smart capabilities. So those are really thermostats. Let's talk about lights. So lights, you have various different types, but you got a big brand. The big brand, for example, is Hue lights. So they come with a hub. So Hue provides a hub. I think they call it the bridge, but it's the Hue hub. And you've got your various products, and they all connect back to the hub. So you'll have your light bulb, in my poor drawing. You'll have your motion sensors. You'll have your switches, okay, and so on. And all of these will communicate with each other through the hub, and the hub has access to the internet. So if we draw this back, pointing it back over to the internet, the hub can access the internet, the bulbs can't. However, there are other products like LIFX that these bulbs do connect to the internet directly. They are Wi-Fi enabled. So that means that you can purchase a bulb, which probably will be cheaper to get your one light up and running via Wi-Fi, rather than having to buy a hub first and then getting all your light bulbs to work. That's another consideration. Other thing is switches. So the light switch. So the light switch enables you. So basically, it's a physical switch on the wall. And if you wire that in, and if you use a product, for example, called Shelly, which I love this product. And a Shelly, basically what it does is it sits behind the wall. It's a little box, sits behind the wall, and with that, you connect it to Wi-Fi, and you can turn on and turn off the lights, even if it's been turned off at the power. So the limitation with the bulbs, basically, it's the bulb that's smart, it's not the switch. So if you turn the bulb off at the source, then you can't turn it on. So you can't turn it off at the wall, which is the most natural thing that everyone will do. So that's I'll dedicate an entire video and actually showcase this in more detail, sort of what you can do with automating your lights. Okay, so next type of product, which I think they're becoming quite popular now. So they're like smart doorbells, and in general just Wi-Fi IP cameras. So doorbells, they normally capture to protect your home, and they would connect via Wi-Fi. So doorbells are their own category, let's say, and we've also got home security product. So the home security products, you have your motion sensors, and you have all sort of contact sensors to figure out if someone has opened the door, if someone smashed through a window, and there's also other type of considerations like a gas leak or a water leak. You've got all these different gadgets that can help you to sort of secure your house. And touching on these sensors are really important, because a sensor, it just makes your products better. So going back to the example of the motion sensor, so if this is a motion sensor, then what that means is that the light will turn on when motion is picked up. That's what I mean by sensors. So these sensors are what really, they add value. Yes, you can buy a Hue light bulb without a sensor, and you can turn it on and off through, for example, your phone, or if you've got it hooked up with a voice assistant. That's brilliant. That will be really great. But after a while, you'll feel frustrated, and it'll be easier just to turn it on at the switch. But if you've got a sensor, then it's going to be a lot easier, because as soon as it picks up motion in the hallway, the light will come on. So you've got a lot of advantages there. Okay, so one last thing, type of products, they're like cleaning products. You have your vacuum cleaners. Now these vacuum cleaners are getting more and more integrated. So they would be normally Wi-Fi products, and they would connect to your Wi-Fi, and they would communicate out to the internet. And what they would do is they would just clean your house, and you can set up schedules and all sorts of things. But that's great. But what you can do with products like Home Assistant, you can actually do things that are much more smarter that you couldn't do really with the inbuilt app. Things like start vacuuming my house when I leave, and stop vacuuming when I'm about to come home. Things like that, because they're quite noisy. You don't want them vacuuming while you're around. You don't want them vacuuming. You could have them vacuuming at night, because it depends on sort of if it's not going to wake you up. But you just want the vacuum to do its thing, but not to be in the way, right? That's what I think. Okay, let's move on to how do we actually interact with these devices. This is quite crucial. It's really crucial. Why is this crucial? Well, I'll tell you, because Real home automation means that you shouldn't be interacting with your products. You shouldn't even think of it. You shouldn't be opening the app. You shouldn't be asking your voice assistant. It should just happen. So that's pure, what I call pure automation. So that's where you want to go. And I'll give you some examples of this in practice. But pure automation is things where people go wrong. They try to do smart homes, which they are basically Wi-Fi enabled products that can do things over the internet, but we're not automating anything, right? We're still manually toggling switches, they're just digital switches. But pure automation is where we want to get to. And it's not easy to get there, but we'll talk about it. So basics, phone, tablet, laptop, so you can interact with your products in these ways. And I think that's brilliant. You can do these sort of things, and a lot of it you can do it on 4G network, so outside, and then on Wi-Fi, so inside. And the phones will give you also some sort of status. They'll give you a status of affairs. So that's quite obviously quite useful when you need some visual like cameras. So cameras you'll need to see who's there or what motion got triggered. So they are very useful having these phones and tablets. Now sometimes tablets get used as like dashboards, and you see them maybe in homes, just put there as sort of your control center, which I think that's quite cool. But again, that's not home automation. But if that's what you want, you can do quite easily. So control panel and all of the hubs that we talked about before, they'll enable you to do that. So if you remember these hubs, the Google Hub, Home Assistant, SmartThings, HomeKit, all of them have got some sort of nice control panel. Now, the more advanced option, like Home Assistant, you've got a lot more control of how things look, and you make it look how you want it to look. With everything else, you sort of have to go with the standard, which I guess is fine, but you need a better in mind. And another way you can interact with your products is voice assistants, right? So you've got voice assistant, so you can interact with your voice. And we know the most famous voice assistant probably is Amazon, Alexa, or Echo, depending on what you've called it. Really close, we've got our Google Home / mini series. They're very, very similar. They're very, very similar. And you've got Siri with HomePod or iPhone, basically Apple products can work with Siri. Now, I think Siri, unfortunately, is a step behind everyone else, but we'll talk about that in a specific episode in the series when we'll cover exactly the pros and cons of each system. But just for now, basically, you can ask your voice assistant to do a command. So turn on the heating, turn the light off, turn this TV off, and, ask the robot vacuum to go back to the charging base. You've got all of these different commands that you can do. So this is where we're at, right? Okay, so let me give you an example. So an example I want to talk to you about is basically the light. So I'm going to turn on the light. So light in a room. Now, what you can do is, yes, you can get your light bulb. So you can, step number 1, buy a smart bulb. Okay, so you've got your smart bulb, and what can you do? Well, I'll show you. You can probably use your phone to turn it on and off, and depending on how you set up your network, you could turn it on and turn it off wherever you are in the world. And you can say, wow, that's amazing. You can turn that on. But every day, are you going to be using that every day? I mean, when do you need to turn off your light bulb from the other way, the other side of the world? Well, I don't know. How can we make this better? So let's add a motion sensor. So we're going to go to, I'm going to say plus motion. Brilliant. Okay. So now we've got a motion sensor. And now what does that give you? It gives you some level of automation. So you're getting there. You maybe let's say 1 out of 5 here. And now we're 2 out of 5. So we can say, well, yeah, if there's motion in this room, then turn on the lights. That's fine. But what about during daytime? I don't want to turn the light on during daytime, right? So I mean, why? It can't just purely always turn it on. It needs to turn it on maybe when it's dark. So then, first step would be you need a light sensor. So a light sensor would give you that option, right? That extra option. And that's going to really work a lot of the times. This is going to work because depending on the light sensor, a lot better than saying sunset, or whatever. Because if it's dark during the day, or if you have particularly, cloudy day, then the light's not going to turn on because it's not actually dark yet. So you really want it based on the light sense of how much light the actual, sensor has, and then that will turn on the bulb. Fantastic. But it's still a smart bulb. You remember what I told you earlier when we were talking about the light switches and the Shelly? If someone kills the power from the switch, the bulb will not turn on, even with a motion sensor. So the fourth step, and this is where you really get to the best automation you can actually have, is that you have the light switch smart. That's really valuable. And now at this stage, even if someone turns it off from the toggle, you can still turn it on, and you can turn it on if there's motion and if it's dark, right? So we've got from one stage where it was very simple to we've built up to get to a stage where we have a lot more control on this, and we've automated this situation in our house. Wow, okay, so that was quite a lot to take in, but let's just recap for a second. So, how do we build a smart home from scratch? We start with the internet. So we need the internet, we need to bring it inside our home, which, that you should normally have that already. We've got a router. Router will give us the way, right? The way the products within the house can communicate. You can do that via Ethernet. So with the cable, and you normally would plug in a hub. And a hub, you have different types of hubs you can pick. You pick Amazon Echo hub, smart things. You can build a home assistant, Google, HomeKit. There's quite a few, and there's many more, right? But these are the main brands. You will also have Wi-Fi in your home, and certain products will connect over Wi-Fi directly, as I explained to you. And each device will be compatible, can be compatible with multiple hubs, and they'll also have the protocol, which you have your Z-Wave, ZigBee, and Wi-Fi. What's a protocol? A protocol is a way of communicating. It's like a standard, it's like a language.
So I hope you've enjoyed the video. In the next episode we'll talk about smart heating, so please subscribe if you don't want to miss it.